Hey everybody, welcome back to another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be back.
So today, we're diving into a really interesting survey that we found from the Cobb County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
And it's basically exploring this idea of a child care center, but specifically for law enforcement.
Uh-huh.
And not just that, but open from like 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you think about like the needs of like law enforcement, families, and, the schedules that they have. It's
Exactly.
just a really fascinating concept. So
Yeah.
I thought we could dive into it today and
Absolutely.
see what kind of insights this survey gives us.
I'm really curious to see what they're thinking down there in Cobb County.
So if you can imagine, this child care center that's specifically tailored to the needs of law enforcement families, what do you think would be some of the biggest advantages
Oh, that's an interesting question.
and maybe even some of the hurdles that they might face?
Well, I think, right off the bat, just the scheduling flexibility.
Right.
I mean, having a center that's open during those off hours, those late nights, early mornings,
Uh-huh.
when officers are, working those unusual shifts, that's got to be a huge plus.
Totally. Yeah.
It's hard enough finding reliable childcare as it is, but when you factor in the unpredictable nature of law enforcement work,
Exactly.
emergencies, things coming up, you never know when you're going to get called in.
Right?
Having that peace of mind that your kids are taken care of no matter what,
Yeah.
that's invaluable.
Yeah. I mean, I think peace of mind is a huge thing, right? Just knowing that you can focus on your job,
Exactly.
knowing your kids are safe and in a good environment.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
I think that's got to be one of the biggest advantages for sure.
So let's actually get into this survey
Okay.
and look at some of the specific questions they asked.
Sounds good.
So right off the bat, they just kind of want to gauge interest,
Yeah.
How many people would actually use this service?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, would you utilize a law enforcement childcare service?
Makes sense. They got to start there.
Yeah. It's kind of like the foundation, right?
Yeah, you got to know if there's even a demand for this kind of specialized childcare.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
And then they get into some more specifics about, like how many children do officers have that actually need care?
Uh-huh.
And what are their current childcare arrangements looking like?
Interesting.
And how many days a week would they actually need this care?
I see. So they're really trying to paint a picture of what the need is like.
Right. It gives you kind of a glimpse into the lives of these families, right?
Exactly.
And the kinds of scheduling challenges that they have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I bet that's pretty complex.
Oh, for sure. And then there's this one question that I found really interesting about emergency situations.
Oh, yeah.
So, let's say an officer gets called out in the middle of the night.
Uh-huh.
They need to have a child care option that's available,
Yeah.
24/7.
Makes sense.
And so this survey actually asks about that. Like, how important is it to have child care available during those emergency situations?
Yeah, I bet that's a major concern for a lot of officers.
I would imagine so, yeah. And I think it just highlights, the unique demands of law enforcement work, right?
Absolutely.
It's not your typical 9-to-5 job.
No, not at all.
And then they get into this really interesting question about recruitment and retention.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, so they specifically ask officers if they believe that this type of program could help attract new talent to the force
Yeah.
and also keep experienced officers from leaving.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if you're trying to recruit new officers or you're trying to retain the ones you have offering a childcare solution like this,
Right.
that's tailored to their needs. It's a huge selling point.
Yeah, it's a perk. It's a benefit that really speaks to the challenges of the job.
Exactly. It shows that the department, they're recognizing the sacrifices that officers and their families make,
Uh-huh.
and they're willing to invest in their well-being.
Yeah. And, it could be a really powerful recruiting tool in a time when, police departments are facing staffing shortages.
Oh, absolutely. This could be a game changer for them.
Yeah, for sure. So another thing that the survey touches on is location,
Of course.
which is obviously really important for any child care center, but
Yeah.
especially one that's catering to law enforcement.
Right?
So they ask about, zip codes and what factors would make the service most accessible.
Accessibility is key.
Right. And imagine a facility that's strategically located, that's, easy for officers from different precincts,
Mhm.
working different shifts to access.
Right. It's got to be convenient. It's got to be safe.
Exactly. Safe and secure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, they leave space for additional comments and suggestions.
Always good to get that feedback.
Yeah. Which is, really important for getting that direct input from officers and their families.
Right. Make sure it actually meets their needs.
Exactly. So I think what's really interesting about this survey
Yeah,
is that it kind of brings to light these challenges that law enforcement families face
absolutely.
that, sometimes I think we don't really think about.
Yeah.
But the need for reliable and flexible childcare,
Uh-huh.
it's huge.
It's massive, and it's not just law enforcement families, right?
Yeah.
All working families,
Right.
but especially those in professions like law enforcement, where the hours are demanding and unpredictable.
Absolutely. And I think, this 24/7 childcare center that they're proposing,
Yeah,
it could be a really innovative solution. It could be groundbreaking.
it could be.
And not just for childcare needs, but for things like, recruitment and retention of officers.
For sure.
So it's not just about the kids, it's about the whole system.
It's about supporting the officers so they can do their jobs effectively.
Exactly. So this survey, it kind of makes you think bigger,
Right.
right? It's like, what other professions could benefit from these kinds of specialized childcare solutions?
That's a great question.
Yeah, what if we started tailoring childcare more to the needs of different workforces?
Interesting to think about.
Right, would that, change things? Would it make it easier for people to balance work and family?
It could have a huge impact.
Right. I mean, think about healthcare workers, firefighters, EMTs,
Yeah.
all those folks who are working, around the clock, keeping our community safe and healthy.
Right. They all have those similar needs.
Absolutely. And if we can provide those support systems,
Yeah,
it just makes everything run more smoothly.
for sure. So I think that's a really interesting thought to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, lots to ponder.
This idea that maybe we need to rethink how we approach childcare in our society
Absolutely.
and how we can better support those essential workers and their families.
Couldn't agree more.
So thanks for joining us today on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
See you next time.
See you then.
All right, bye.
Bye.